All right, good Friday morning. Amy Jacobson here. John Anthony from Black and Right is with me. He's in for Dan Proft, and your show airs every Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. right here on AM 560. And I got your time right, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. But are you going to be here tomorrow, or is somebody filling in for you?
It's not me.
Oh, is that? It wasn't me.
No.
It's not me. Who's going to fill in?
Nick Richmond, CEO of Matrix Home Solutions.
Oh, good.
He and Jeannie Ives are going to be in studio.
All right.
Yeah,
Where
I'll be back on the 31st.
What are you doing?
I'll be back on the 31st.
You want to tell us what you're doing?
Just trying to get refreshed.
Oh, taking a break.
Taking a break.
Yeah, good for you.
A mental break.
You deserve it. I mean, you've got 12 children at home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
But you've got 5 daughters, so any word of, mandatory vaccinations in your school district?
No, they have not said anything like that as of yet. So I know a few of them that are on the board. I don't think Manuka would do that. Manuka School District. There's too many conservative Republicans in Manuka.
Really?
Oh yeah. They
All right,
would they would get trounced.
Different districts are doing different things. We know that District 200 masks are optional.
Yeah.
That's good, whether or not you're vaccinated. For now.
Yep.
Because this could all change. So don't think that you've won the battle yet, everybody.
We're going to continue to fight it, though.
In Geneva, masks are optional regardless of vaccination. In District 21 last night, they had a meeting. Kids K through 5 have got to wear masks.
Yep.
If you are vaccinated,
you
have an option whether or not to wear a mask. So that's good. But in Chicago, we got the word yesterday. Everybody, regardless of vaccinations, teachers, kids K through 12 have to be masked up at all times. And one student, not too happy about it. Well, I'm sure many students aren't happy.
Kids have been mask-free all summer, including sports. There have been no deaths or hospitalizations because of COVID. With all due respect, to make them wear masks again is not following science or data. You are simply making decisions based on your own fears.
And that student not alone.
I don't think you need to, because you're with so many people throughout the day, and you have to build up immunity somehow.
So that means anyone inside the building, teachers, parents, volunteers, coaches have to wear masks. Players have to wear masks while participating in fall indoor sports, including girls volleyball. And then basketball season's right around the corner once school starts, and they have to wear masks. And the WHO has always said, if you are exercising, you should not wear a mask.
Right.
Because it does restrict your breathing. I don't care. I've seen it. I've watched football players get violently sick.
What about the sweat and all that?
They're in the springtime, our masks were dripping with sweat, and wet masks are not effective.
Unless
so we
you're in a
take that off
pool.
and put on more? Oh, yeah. Well, they make swimmers put on masks after you're done with your competition. Before you grab that towel, you got to put their mask on. But yesterday, we heard a little birdie told us that the IHSA, IDPH are deciding whether or not to delay fall sports because of this slight tick in cases. I mean, people, we went from 0.4 to 1.5% positivity rate in Chicago. The positivity rate for the state is at 3%. But these are, when did it come? It's about cases now and not hospitalizations. Our hospitalization death rate is doing very well.
Yeah.
It's the best that it has been since the pandemic began.
Well, they're moving the
goalposts. Because that's what this was all about.
Correct.
Was hospitalizations. Will we have enough hospital beds?
Yeah.
We are fine there. But still, Pritzker, when I asked him about it yesterday, Governor Pritzker said this.
We're constantly monitoring COVID, as you know, across the state, and we'll impose mitigations when and how we need to. As you know, I've not been reticent to do that, and especially because we want to keep people safe, especially those who are unvaccinated, who are most at risk.
So saving one life. Kids are not at risk. They are not a health threat.
Right.
0.002% have died across the country from COVID.
What do you think what's really behind the whole kids and enforcing masks and mandating vaccines? What do you think is really
control.
behind that?
It's because they've dug a hole so deep that they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Honestly. So then I pressed him again. So is it on the table delaying fall sports?
No, I know this is something that you pay a lot of attention to and keep pushing on. This is not something you say you have an inside source. This is not something, it's constantly something that the IDPH is monitoring to make sure that we keep our children safe, that their families are kept safe, that people who work in schools are safe. But it's not something that we're immediately looking at doing.
Okay, well, there's a little positive there.
Yeah.
But I don't trust him.
Sounds like he likes you, though.
With more on this, I show up and he's like, oh, God, who invited her? With more on this, let's welcome back to the program Dave Ruggles. He is from Wheaton, Pleasantville, we call it. Or you can
Not
call it
anymore.
the mean streets of Wheaton. But he did the right thing, and I'm so envious of you because I wish I could have done what you've done. And he took his son, who's a premier athlete, a basketball player, and he gave him a life. He gave him a chance, and he moved to Indiana.
Oh.
So, Dave, how did it go? How was your son's basketball season?
How you doing? Thanks for having me on
Hey.
this morning. It went great. They just have a totally different approach in Indiana than they do in Illinois, and that was kind of the thing that I was looking for. I wanted to see, at the first sign of trouble, you can't cut and run. And this particular school, at one point, had a third of their student body and 25 teachers, I think it was, quarantined.
Wow.
Last fall, and they stayed open 5 days a week, and they continued with businesses open and schools open and sports open.
Wow.
And what ends up happening is it runs its course in that type of situation. And like you said, Amy, the risks for these kids are basically nil.
Right.
And they're just being realistic. There's a realistic approach, and then there's the unicorn approach. And I think in Illinois, when I was running the rallies and doing those, doing all the interviews and everything else, I pointed out at the time, I said, the same people who are in charge now are going to be in charge next fall. And if you think that they're not going to make the same decisions looking at interpreting the data the way they do, then, you're sorely mistaken. And I hope that ends up not being, true, but I don't know why anybody would be surprised that they'd be considering it, because they're the same people who made the wrong decisions the first time around.
Yeah, but Dave,
So-
have we really gotten all of the real, raw, and true data that to really make informed decisions?
Well, I don't trust the data. I mean, that's number one. I think it changes. I think the death count is ridiculous.
Oh, ridiculous.
You've seen doctors, report. I mean, did you die of COVID or with COVID?
Yeah,
I mean, those are two totally different things.
Yes.
I think anytime you've got funding involved, you're going to get the wrong people are going to make the wrong decisions on that. But again, I think it's how you interpret the data. Okay, you have to monitor it, you have to look at it. But if you have one foot out the door, another on a banana peel at the first sign of trouble, then you're just looking for an excuse to shut things down. And if you are advocating for the kids and saying, look, we're going to, I've said it a million times, start with the premise that the kids need to be in school and playing sports because they're not at risk. Let's take care of the people who are at risk, who, by the way, at this point should have been vaccinated, right? If you haven't been,
Right.
you've made the conscientious decision not to be, which is fine. But, then you don't get to whine if you catch it. And we as a society shouldn't shut down to protect you or anybody else at that point, right? I mean, it's a little bit different this time around than the first time around because of that. And it's a conscientious decision that people make. But from my vantage point, I heard you mention that kids are mandated to get vaccinated to go to school. I mean, my daughter's at Indiana. They're requiring it. They call her every week.
They
She already
call
had the
her?
virus. Yes.
So proof of
She has-
of infection isn't enough that you have to have the vaccine.
She's already had the virus. They've 68 of the 72 or whatever it was in her sorority caught it in the first month they were down there. There were 0 hospitalizations. And now you're telling us that she has to be vaccinated when she's already had the virus, which is, just
That's crazy.
stupid.
So what are you guys going to do? Because you're a nonconformist, and that's why we get along so well.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because, they got you when it comes to college. You love the school you're at. And so what are you going to do? You're going to take a stand and quit? I mean, they know they've got you. So in this particular case, my daughter, who's 19 now, has made the decision that she's going to go ahead and do it, and I mean, as a dad, I have to honor her making that decision because that's really where I'm at on this whole thing. Make your own decision and then run with it, but don't make excuses later and don't blame people later. And all I told the Indiana people was, if there are any issues at all down the road with my daughter, health-wise, you're going to be hearing from me, and
They will hear from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they will. And it'll be an attorney that makes a lot of money per hour probably. But, regardless, it's just not, they're not following common sense. And people say follow the science flip-flops,
Yep.
and then the sheep just follow them no matter what they say. And the thing that works with science is that people question. The smart people should question everything. And then that forces the data to be examined, and it
Right.
forces theories to hold up to scrutiny. And you can't do that right now because it's not politically correct. You're a vax denier, you're a Trumpster, you're whatever, And anytime there's, people are shutting down discussion and debate, you got a major, major problem.
That's true.
And that's really where we are, obviously.
All right. So is there mask mandates for your son this fall in Indiana?
No, they've made it optional. I pretty much agree with everything they've done. They do have a quarantine policy that I'm not completely clear on. I think it's within 3 feet of somebody who had it for 15 minutes or more or something.
I hate that stuff.
That thing I can't stand.
See,
and I told them, I actually told the school district, and, I'm going to go in and emphasize this again, when basketball season starts, I want my kids sitting in the middle of the classroom 5 feet from anybody. I mean,
right.
You want to play this 3-foot game, then I don't want anybody within 5 feet of him ever, because I don't, he wants to play and they need him to play. So,
I had so many people that I know that have sons that play sports that they kept them home.
Yeah.
And to do e-learning, and then would just allow them to go to basketball practice because they had scholarships on the line. My friend in Minnesota did that. Some people here did that. And I understand why they did that. Because you go in, these contact tracers are relentless. And that's what.
Yeah, they are.
That's why I got my kids vaccinated for political reasons, because both of my kids had it, because I don't want them quarantined. And they told me, they said, all right, well, if you get your kids quarantined or vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine. And now I'm learning today that doesn't matter. That even if they're around somebody, they have to quarantine for 10 days. That is hell.
Wow.
That is hell on earth.
That's the problem with this whole thing, is that they've made it so unenticing to get vaccinated. It's unbelievable. It should be you get vaccinated, you don't need a mask, you don't need to quarantine. It's over. If you catch this thing, and don't test me if I feel fine.
Ugh.
I mean, I get a sinus infection. I don't want to go to the doctor because I don't want all the nonsense, honestly.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there, with a sinus infection for 2 weeks. Think about all the other people who aren't going in and getting things, getting tested for more serious ailments because they just don't want to deal with the nonsense. I mean, it's the collateral damage from the way these people have approached this thing is tenfold worse than the virus itself, at least tenfold.
Now, are you going to vaccinate your son?
Nobody's told me I have to yet,
Right.
so no.
But if it would keep him out of quarantine, would you do it?
I don't know if, again, Amy, I don't know if I believe him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, you can tell me that you're not going to quarantine the kid if he catches it after he's vaccinated. And maybe in Indiana, it's more of a believable statement, but honestly, they keep moving the goalposts. So why would I, and that's, this is a thing that people used to have a great faith in our medical community, in our science community. And, you're called a kook for questioning these people, questioning their motives. But, at some point it's going to come out what's behind this thing. And like you said, John, who knows exactly what it is, if it's control, if it's just people are just scared. I mean, I'm not going to posit a theory on that, but at some point, I think it's going to come out who's getting paid what, and then we're going to really have to shine a bright light on this whole thing.
I mean, I don't see this ending this year or next year. I mean, my brother-in-law, he laughed at me. He goes, I told you this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I told him about fall sports maybe being delayed. He goes, I told you. And it's not for just Chicago. If Pritzker, he's the governor of the entire state, it's the entire state.
Yep.
So people down south who have 0 cases in their community and are like scratching their heads because once again, they have to pay for the sins of Chicagoans. Yeah. We need to fight back. If he delays fall sports, what should we do collectively as parents, Dave?
Well,
because we've had many, I know we've been to many rallies together.
I mean, we did a Wheaton rally that had, 1,100 or 1,500 people or whatever, and that ended up being, I think, the biggest one of all of them. And there was one we had in Naperville that should have been 5,000. There was air coverage from the media. People have to get out off their rear ends, and they've got to go out and they've got to stand for something. I mean, they have to understand that, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and that's what people just don't get. And I don't know in Illinois if there's enough resolve to fight it. I mean, there's been a mass exodus even in Wheaton.
I think it is now.
Of people just trying to get out of there, and they have gotten out of there. Now, somebody else moves into their house, so the school district doesn't really pay the price. The city doesn't pay the price yet. But the next move is going to be followed by nobody going in, and that's, unfortunately, it's kind of counter to what I like to do, which is to stay and fight. But at some point, I'm looking at my kid, and he is smiling. His personality's come out. People insisted it was all a sports thing for us. he's going to play in college for free as a basketball player. So, and whether he would have done that in Illinois or not, I don't know. But what I can tell you is
he wouldn't have.
His happiness and everything else is really, and his education. I'm just going to tell you this one college roommate of my daughter's, or friend of my daughter's, she said, and it's a straight A student, you know what, we're going to have to relearn how to learn again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're sitting there online with the computer doing their class and their phone in their right hand giving them the answers. And anybody who doesn't, and then if you're poor, they don't have the computer, so they're not even logged on. So what you've got is you've got half the group cheating, the other half the group not even bothering.
That's true.
And we're okay with that as a society. And that's just absurd.
Well, shame on all these parents, too, who just sat on their hands and let the government roll all over them. I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean,
and if people don't fight back this time, then there's no hope for them. And the only thing I can...
You need 5,000 people. 5,000 people in a rally, but it's got to be guaranteed, and I don't know how you do that. And what happens is when the numbers come out big, then they take notice, because ultimately Pritzker, like Newsom, is only interested in being reelected. I mean, that's really what everything that drives him forward is. And that's how you hit him. You hit him in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
You hit him in the place that he's most vulnerable, which is, this is probably the first time he's ever been in charge of anything, even though he's a billionaire.
I mean, it's election year for him. If he does this, I think he's toast. Well, I say that, but then his biggest gift is that the Illinois Republican Party doesn't exist.
And the voters forget.
Right.
Oh, they won't forget this.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
you think so?
Hey, look at what happened in 2020. They've forgotten already what happened in 2020.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, unfortunately. I mean, that doesn't mean you stop fighting. It doesn't mean you give up hope, because that's really what they're banking on. But it is an uphill battle there. And, people need to understand that. And there's a lot of good people that are still there that are understand and agree with us. I mean, if and when the time comes, they've got to step up. And if they don't, then honestly, they have nobody to blame but themselves. And I would say this to you, Amy, too, and you and I have talked about this before. You said, I did something you couldn't do, and I understand kind of your situation, why you couldn't. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people out there who say, I can't do it. And my answer to them is, yeah, you can. You just go do it. You just go get an apartment and stay across the state line, whether it's Iowa or Indiana, and do it for your kids. I mean, if you're really a good parent, and I'm not saying this to you because I know your situation or whatever, but there's people that are just making excuses. Your kids' mental well-being is more important than your bank accounts and whatever else. It just is. That's your number one purpose as a parent, in my opinion, is to advocate for your child and other children. That's what we do. That's how we continue the human race. And holding your kid up as a shield when there's an active shooter in the room is not the way to do it, right? You dive in front of the kid. And it's just the two different approaches. And I mean, that's a harsh illustration of what we're doing here. But if you think about it, it really is. It's two different mindsets, right? Yeah. We're going to sacrifice the kids to protect the 75-year-old. By the way, if you've asked a 75-year-old, do you want to be protected? It's a grandma probably who's going to say, yeah, I'll be safe. I'll watch from afar. But I want my grandkids to have an experience at school and sports.
That's what my mom said. My mom said, I will stay locked in my house for years if your kids could just have their lives back.
Right.
Yeah.
And
and if you're afraid, stay in. If your kid's unhealthy, keep them in. I don't begrudge that. And I think we should make accommodations for those people. I really do. And I've always said this.
Yeah,
but
it's true.
We got to get out ahead of this thing, and we got to learn to live with it, because it doesn't appear that it's going away.
No, it's like a cold. It is never going to go away. It's a cold.
It's
a virus. It's the flu.
Right.
All right, Dave Ruggles, we're going to have to leave it there. But love what you've done, and have admired it, and we'll stay in touch. And good luck to your son in his basketball season.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
And Dave joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer, the time has arrived. It is Open Mic Friday.
It's my first
312. This is what?
This is my first open mic.
Uh-oh. Better jump on a line there. Maybe I'll take your phone call. 312-642-5600 is our phone number. Anything you want to talk about, we are here. Anything you want to vent about, yeah, that's the time to do it. 312-642-5600. But now let's jump into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
8:30 on AM 560, The Answer. And we have partly sunny skies, 75 degrees. Opening ceremonies at the Tokyo Olympics.